At Thanksgiving dinner, my wife said, "This marriage is a mistake." The whole table froze. I placed my phone on the tablecloth and played the recording of her confession. That was only the beginning. You know how they say timing is everything? Well, my wife proved that theory during our family Thanksgiving dinner. Although not in the way she had imagined, I had been suspicious for weeks. The whispered phone calls that stopped dead as soon as I entered the room, the sudden interest in serious conversations about our future, the way she kept mentioning that this Thanksgiving would be special, different somehow. Call it intuition, but something felt off. So, I did what any smart man would do. I prepared myself. That Thursday morning, I set up a small recording device in the dining room, hidden behind the centerpiece my mother-in-law had insisted on bringing. Just a precaution, I told myself, better to have it and not need it than the other way around. The whole family was there. My parents, her sister with her husband, my brother, even my elderly grandmother who hardly ever left her house anymore. Everyone gathered around the dining table, the smell of turkey and stuffing filling the air. The football game was playing softly in the background. Everything seemed normal at first. Her mother complimented the mashed potatoes. Her father asked me for updates on my work, trivial holiday small talk, while we filled our plates and settled in. Then came the moment for the prayer. My father, being the eldest, traditionally led us in giving thanks. We all held hands, bowed our heads, and began to share what we were thankful for this year. Her sister mentioned her new promotion. My brother talked about his recovery after surgery. My grandmother brought up having another year with the family. Standard, sincere gratitudes. Then it was my wife's turn. She squeezed my hand, took a deep breath, and instead of the usual thanks for health and family, she dropped a bomb that silenced the entire table. I am thankful to finally have the courage to admit that this marriage was a mistake. The silence was immediate and total. Forks stopped halfway to mouths. My grandmother's hearing aids seemed to be working perfectly because her eyes widened. Even the football game seemed quieter somehow. But I was ready. I did not flinch. I did not get angry. I did not even look surprised. Instead, I smiled calmly and said, "You know what? I am thankful too. I am thankful to have recorded that confession." I reached into my jacket pocket and placed my phone on the table, the recording app still running, capturing every word. "And I am especially thankful that your Christmas present is already packed in the car. Should I go get it now? Or would you rather finish your turkey first?" The color drained from her face faster than wine from a broken glass. Her mouth opened and then closed as if she were trying to catch words that had already escaped. Her mother looked confused. Her father's fork clattered against his plate. My parents exchanged looks that could have lit up the neighborhood. "What recording?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. I stopped the recording and played it back. Her own words filled the dining room, crystal clear. "I am thankful to finally have the courage to admit that this marriage was a mistake." That recording, I said simply. "And as for the Christmas present, well, let's just say I have been preparing for this moment for longer than you think." She tried to backtrack immediately. "I did not mean it like that. I was just emotional. The holidays make me say crazy things." But the damage was done, and everyone at the table knew it. You do not accidentally confess that your marriage is a mistake during the Thanksgiving prayer. That is not a slip of the tongue. It is a calculated move. "Actually," I continued, carving my turkey with deliberate precision, "you meant exactly what you said. Just like you meant it when you told your friend 3 weeks ago that you were going to make this Thanksgiving memorable. Just like you meant it when you told her you wanted to hurt me as much as possible." The room grew even quieter, if that was possible. Her sister's husband stopped chewing completely. "How do you," she started, "know about that conversation?" I finished for her. "The same way I know about a lot of conversations you have had lately. The same way I know that this confession was not a spontaneous burst of emotion. It was planned cruelty. My grandmother, God bless her, was the first to break the family silence. "Well," she said, reaching for the cranberry sauce, "this is certainly more entertaining than last year's conversation about your uncle's gallbladder surgery." Even in the midst of everything falling apart, I had to appreciate her timing. Some things run in the family, apparently. But my wife was not done trying to control the narrative. She stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the hardwood floor. "This is insane. You are making me look like the bad guy when I was just being honest about my feelings." "Honest?" I looked up from my plate, fork still in hand. "You want to talk about honesty?" Because I have a car full of honesty waiting outside, and I think this family deserves to know exactly how honest you have been. The threat hung in the air like smoke from a blown-out candle. She knew I was not bluffing. Whatever was in that car, whatever Christmas present I had mentioned, it was not going to help her. Her father cleared his throat uncomfortably. Maybe we should all calm down and finish dinner. It is Thanksgiving after all. But there was no putting this particular genie back in its bottle. She had opened the door with her confession, and I was walking right through it. "Dad," I said to her father, using the name I had called him for years. "With all due respect, your daughter chose the timing for this conversation. She chose to ruin Thanksgiving dinner with her announcement. I am merely responding to what she started." My wife's eyes scanned the table, looking for support, someone to take her side, but her own family members were looking at her with expressions ranging from disappointment to confusion. "I think," I said, standing up and folding my napkin neatly next to my plate, "that it is time to go get that Christmas present. Because honestly, after hearing her confession, I think everyone here deserves to understand the full picture of what has been going on in this marriage." The walk to the car felt like the 20 longest steps of my life, but also the most liberating. Behind me, I could hear muffled voices coming from the dining room, urgent whispers, and what sounded like her mother asking pointed questions. When I returned with the manila envelope in hand, the entire dynamic had shifted. Everyone was staring at her, and she looked like she wanted to disappear into the floorboards. "So," I said, sitting back down in my chair, "who wants to know what real honesty looks like?" The manila envelope felt heavier than it should have as I placed it on the table next to the mashed potatoes. My wife's eyes were glued to it, as if it contained nuclear launch codes. "Before we open this," I said, pulling out my phone again, "I think everyone should hear the rest of what she said." Because her Thanksgiving confession was just the appetizer. Her face went from pale to green faster than a traffic light. "You can't record people without their permission. That's illegal." "Actually," I replied, scrolling through my phone, "in our state, only one party needs to consent to the recording. That would be me. And seeing as these conversations took place in our shared home, I had every right to protect myself." My father-in-law leaned forward. "What conversation?" I pressed play on another recording. Her voice filled the room, crystal clear, from a phone call she had made 2 weeks earlier. "I can't stand being married to him anymore. He thinks he's so perfect, so in control of everything. I want to destroy that confidence. I want him to feel as miserable as I do." Her friend's voice followed. "So, what's your plan?" "Thanksgiving dinner. In front of his whole family. I'm going to announce that our marriage is over and make it look like his fault. Make him look like the loser for once." The recording stopped. The only sound was the ticking of the grandfather clock in the corner and someone's stomach rumbling. Her sister was the first to speak. "My God, what is wrong with you? That is not." She started, then stopped. How could you deny her own voice saying those exact words? "There is more," I said calmly, taking a sip of water. "Should I play the one where you discussed how to make me look unstable, or the one where you talked about trying to turn my family against me?" My mother, who had been silent until then, set her wine glass down with more force than necessary. "I have known you for 8 years. I welcomed you into this family. I defended you when people said you were too young to get married. And this is how you treat my son?" "Mom, please," my wife tried. "You don't understand the whole situation." "Then explain it," my grandmother said sharply. Despite her age, she still had that tone that could make adults feel like misbehaving children. "Explain how planning to humiliate your husband in front of his family makes sense." But instead of explaining, she doubled down. "He is controlling. He monitors everything I do. He does not trust me." I almost laughed at the irony. "I started monitoring you because you gave me reasons not to trust you. And clearly, my instincts were right." Her brother-in-law, who rarely spoke at family gatherings, cleared his throat. "Look, I don't know much about marriage counseling or any of that, but planning to hurt someone you are supposed to love is just cruel." "Thank you," I said, genuinely appreciating his intervention, because that was exactly what it was. Not fixing our marriage, not honest communication, just causing maximum emotional damage. I picked up the manila envelope. "Which brings us to that Christmas present I mentioned." Her hands were actually shaking now. "Whatever is in there, you are taking it out of context." "Oh, really?" I opened the envelope and pulled out a stack of papers. Divorce papers, filed and ready to go. Because unlike someone at this table, I do not believe in surprise attacks during family holidays. The gasps around the table were audible. Her mother brought a hand to her chest. You already filed for divorce? Her father asked. I prepared the filing. I corrected. Because I knew this day was coming. She has been planning this humiliation for weeks. I have been planning my response for just as long. My wife stood up so fast her chair almost tipped over. This is crazy. You are all acting like I am some kind of monster. Marriage is hard. People have doubts. Having doubts and planning emotional warfare are two different things, my brother said. He had gone through a divorce himself 3 years earlier, so he knew the territory. When I had doubts about my marriage, I talked to my wife about it. I did not plot to destroy her in front of her family. Exactly, I said, spreading the divorce papers on the table as if I were dealing cards. See, everyone, this is what real honesty looks like. I could have filed these papers months ago when I first started suspecting something was wrong. I could have had her served at work, or at the grocery store, or on any random Tuesday. I looked directly at her. But I gave you the chance to be honest with me. First, I waited. I hoped you would choose to fix things instead of breaking them. Instead, you chose to plan this performance. Her sister was reading the divorce papers. These are really detailed. When did you start preparing this? The day after I heard that first phone call about wanting to destroy my confidence. I realized I was not married to someone who wanted to solve problems. I was married to someone who wanted to create them. My wife finally exploded. Fine. You want honesty? I hate being married to you. You make me feel small, stupid, and boring. Every day, I feel like I am failing a test I did not know existed. The room fell silent again. But this time, instead of shock, I saw understanding on the faces. There it is, I said softly. The real, honest confession. Not a calculated attack to hurt me, but the real issue. You were unhappy, and instead of talking to me about it, you decided to make me the enemy. Her mother was crying softly. Sweetheart, why did you not ever say anything? We could have helped you through this. Because she did not want to get through it, I answered. She wanted to win. It was never about fixing our marriage. It was about making sure I lost something important when it ended. I gestured around the table. My family, my reputation, my confidence. She wanted to take all of that away from me because she felt bad. My father, who had watched everything unfold with the patience of someone who had seen a lot of life, finally spoke up. Son, what do you need from us right now? It was such a simple question, but it hit me harder than anything else that had happened. My own father was asking how to support me, while my wife's family finally saw who she truly was. Just witness this, I said, pulling a pen from my jacket. Because I am signing these papers right here, right now, in front of everyone who heard her confession. Her face fell. You can't do this on Thanksgiving. You started this on Thanksgiving. I reminded her, clicking the pen. I am just finishing it. And with that, I signed my name on the divorce papers while the turkey grew cold and the football game played to an absent audience. The sound of my pen scratching across the divorce papers was the only noise in the room. My signature looked surprisingly steady, given the circumstances. I put the pen down and looked up at my wife, who was staring at the papers as if they might spontaneously combust. There, I said, closing the pen with a satisfying click. Christmas present delivered early. Her father rubbed his forehead. All of this is happening so fast. Maybe everyone should take a breath and think about this. Dad, I said respectfully, I have been thinking about this for months. Every angle, every possibility, every consequence. This is not an impulsive decision made in anger. It is the result of careful planning after finding out who I really married. My wife was still standing behind her chair, gripping it as if it were holding her upright. You planned all this? You set me up. I protected myself. I corrected. There is a difference. You planned to attack me with emotional cruelty. I planned to respond with legal reality. I reached into the envelope again and pulled out another set of papers. But the divorce papers are not really the main Christmas present. These are. The new documents landed on the table with a thud. Her eyes widened when she recognized what they were. Financial asset protection agreements, I announced to the table. Signed and filed 6 weeks ago. You see, while she was planning her Thanksgiving performance, I was meeting with lawyers and accountants. Her voice barely came out in a whisper. You moved our money. I protected my money, I clarified. The money I earned, the money I saved, the money I invested. It turns out that when you are married to someone who is plotting to destroy you financially during a divorce, you have legal options to prevent that. My brother leaned forward, genuinely curious. How does that work? Well, I said, settling back into my chair as if I were explaining a football play. When someone repeatedly talks about taking you for everything you are worth, and you have recordings of those conversations, the courts tend to be sympathetic to asset protection measures. I pulled my phone out again. Should I play the recording where she discusses hiding expenses to make me look financially irresponsible, or the one where she researches how to claim she deserves half of everything I built before we even met? Her mother's face went from confused to horrified. You were going to lie about the finances? She was going to claim that my business success during our marriage entitled her to ownership shares she never earned, I explained. Fortunately, corporate incorporation documents do not lie, and bank statements show exactly where every dollar comes from. My wife finally sat down heavily, as if her legs could no longer support her. You were planning to leave me for months? Wrong again, I said, taking a bite of stuffing that had somehow stayed warm through all the drama. I was planning to survive your departure. There is a crucial difference. I gestured with my fork toward the recordings. Every conversation was you talking about ending our marriage. You just wanted to do it in a way that hurt me the most and benefited you the most. I simply made sure that would not be possible. Her sister was reading the financial documents. These are really comprehensive. You documented everything. When someone threatens to destroy your life's work out of spite, you document everything, I confirmed. Bank statements, corporate records, property deeds, investment accounts. Everything protected and accounted for. My grandmother, who had been quietly watching everything while eating her mashed potatoes, finally chimed in. Well done, my dear. In my day, we called that common sense. Grandma is right, I said, with the first real smile I had felt in weeks. It is not vindictive, it is practical. She wanted to play games with our marriage, our family relationships, and our finances. I just made sure I knew the rules before she started playing. My wife's voice broke when she spoke. I never said I wanted to destroy your business. I pulled out my phone one more time. Recording from October 15th. Should I play it? No, she said quickly, which told everyone at the table exactly what was on that recording. Here is what I find fascinating, I continued, addressing the room more than her. She spent weeks planning how to hurt me, how to humiliate me, how to exploit me financially, but she never planned how to fix our marriage. Her mother was wiping her eyes with her napkin. Honey, is this true? Did you really plan all of this? The silence stretched long enough for the grandfather clock to chime the half hour. When she finally answered, her voice was barely audible. I was angry. Angry enough to plan financial fraud? My father asked pointedly. Angry enough to research community property laws in our state to see how much of his business she could claim? I added obligingly. Angry enough to call 3 different divorce lawyers for consultations. Angry enough to take screenshots of banking information and send them to your personal email account. Each revelation hit the table like an individual bomb. Her family members exchanged looks that communicated volumes without words, but not angry enough to have a single honest conversation with me about what was bothering her, I concluded. Not angry enough to suggest marriage counseling. Not angry enough to literally try anything other than deception and revenge. Her brother-in-law shook his head. This is beyond marriage problems. This is, he paused, searching for the right word. Fraud. My mother obligingly supplied the word. The word you are looking for is fraud. Thank you, I said to my mother. And yes, attempting to claim ownership of assets you did not contribute to based on false documents is fraud, which is why everything I did to protect myself was completely legal. I stood up and began gathering the papers, organizing them into neat piles. So here's how it works now. The divorce papers are signed and will be filed on Monday morning. The asset protection agreements are already in effect, and everyone in this room has heard exactly why this marriage ended. My wife looked around the table in desperation. Someone has to think this is wrong. He recorded me without telling me. He moved money without telling me. He planned all of this behind my back. You planned to commit fraud behind his back, her own sister pointed out. You planned to lie to lawyers and judges. You planned to humiliate him in front of his family. What exactly did you expect him to do? Just take it. I expected him to fight for our marriage, she said. And for the first time, She sounded genuinely emotional instead of manipulative. I did fight for our marriage, I replied, sliding the papers back into the envelope. I did it by trying to protect it from someone who was actively working to destroy it. Unfortunately, that person was you. The football game was still playing in the background. A team scored a touchdown to the cheers of a distant crowd. It felt surreal, as if normal life were happening in a parallel universe while our family imploded during Thanksgiving dinner. So what happens now? Her father asked. I looked around the table at the faces that had been part of my life for almost a decade. Now, you all know the truth. Not the version she was planning to tell you after blindsiding me today. Not a story about how I was a terrible husband who drove her to leave. The real truth about who planned what and when. The truth that she threw away a good marriage to satisfy a need for revenge, my father added. The truth that she valued hurting me more than building a life with me. I nodded, and with that settled, I sat back down and returned to my Thanksgiving dinner. After all, I still had a lot to be thankful for. My wife was still standing behind her chair, as if she were afraid to sit down, as if remaining standing would somehow help her regain control of the situation. But control had changed hands the moment she decided to weaponize Thanksgiving dinner. Do you want to know what is really in this envelope? I asked, pulling out yet another folder. A timeline. Every conversation, every suspicious behavior, every lie documented with a date and time. I spread the papers on the table like a court case file. August 23rd, first call to divorce lawyer number 1. September 5th, consultation with divorce lawyer number 2. September 18th, meeting with divorce lawyer number 2. Her face went through several shades of pale as I continued. October 2nd, conversation with your college friend about making me pay for wasting your best years. October 9th, research on business valuation methods. October 23rd, screenshot of our joint savings account balance sent to your personal email. My father-in-law was reading the timeline with the expression of someone examining evidence in a criminal case. You documented all of this. When someone starts behaving like they are planning a campaign against you, you document everything, I replied. Especially when that person has access to your home, your finances, and your personal information. Her sister looked up from the papers. 3 different divorce lawyers. Why would you need 3? Because the first 2 told her she had no grounds for the kind of settlement she wanted. I answered before my wife could respond. The third was apparently more creative with legal interpretations. My wife finally found her voice. You hired someone to follow me? I hired a private investigator after you started meeting with lawyers behind my back, I confirmed. It seemed like a reasonable response to discovering my wife was building a legal case against me while pretending our marriage was fine. I pulled out a professional report. Fascinating reading, actually. 3 months of meetings, phone calls, and research activity documented. All focused on ending our marriage in the most financially advantageous way for you. My brother whistled low. That is not marriage counseling territory, that is war. Exactly, I agreed. And once I realized I was in a war I did not know had started, I started fighting to win. My grandmother was still eating steadily through all of this, occasionally nodding her head in approval at particularly strategic moves. In my day, we called that preparing for battle. The investigator also documented some interesting conversations with her friends. I continued, leafing through the report. Apparently, the plan was not just to gain a financial advantage. The plan was to destroy my reputation in the process. Her mother looked horrified. What do you mean? I mean conversations about making me look like an unstable, controlling husband who drove her to desperation. Stories about emotional abuse that never happened. Claims about financial control that were completely fabricated. I looked directly at her. Should I read the transcript where you practiced crying while telling your friend how I supposedly isolated you from your family? The same family sitting right here, who knows that I constantly encouraged you to spend time with them? That is enough, she said. But there was no authority left in her voice. No, I do not think it is enough, her own father said firmly. I think we need to hear exactly what kind of lies you were planning to tell about this family. The betrayal in his voice was undeniable. This was no longer just about her marriage. She had planned to damage relationships with people he loved. I read from the report. I have to make it look like he turned me against my family, so they feel guilty and take my side. The silence that followed was different from the previous shocks. It was the silence of people realizing they had been targeted for manipulation. Her mother's voice was barely a whisper. You were going to lie about us? I was going to do what I had to do to get out of this marriage with something to show for it. My wife finally cracked, her mask falling completely. I wasted 8 years of my life trying to be the perfect wife for someone who never appreciated what he had. My voice rose for the first time all evening. I worked 60 hours a week to build a business that could support us both. I bought the house you chose. I planned vacations to the places you wanted to go. I spent my weekends with your family because it made you happy. I stood up, the chair scraping against the floor. But apparently, none of that mattered because what you really wanted was to feel like a victim. And when reality did not cooperate with that narrative, you decided to create evidence to support it. You don't understand the pressure of being married to someone so successful, she said, which was perhaps the most revealing thing she had said all day. I said, sitting back down with sudden clarity. There it is. The real problem is not that I was a bad husband. The problem is that I was a successful husband, and it made you feel inadequate. My mother leaned forward. Sweetheart, success in a marriage is not a competition. When one spouse succeeds, both benefit. Easy to say when you are not the one being overshadowed every day, my wife retorted. Overshadowed. I could not help but laugh. I bragged about your art to anyone who would listen. I hung your paintings in my office. I tried to get you gallery showings. I offered to fund your studio space. How exactly did I overshadow you? By being better at everything than me, she said. And suddenly, the whole situation made terrible sense. Her sister shook her head slowly. So instead of working harder or finding your own path, you decided to tear him down. I decided to stop living in his shadow, my wife replied. But even she seemed to realize how weak that sounded. You decided to commit fraud and destroy family relationships, my father corrected. Those are not the same things. I pulled the final document from the envelope. Which brings us to this. A complete financial accounting of our marriage. Every dollar earned, every expense paid, every debt incurred. Everything documented and verified. The spreadsheet was impressive in its detail, color-coded and cross-referenced. Green represents income one generated. Blue represents income you generated. Red represents joint expenses. Yellow represents expenses you incurred. The color distribution told a story that was hard to dispute. A lot of green, a little blue, reasonable amounts of red, and more yellow than there should have been. $15,000 in credit card debt I did not know about, I announced. Hidden across 4 different cards. Apparently, part of the exit strategy was to max out the credit in my name and make the debt disappear in the divorce settlement. Her father stared at the financial breakdown with the expression of someone who had just discovered his daughter was a stranger. You racked up secret debt? I was preparing for independence, she said defensively. You were preparing for theft, I corrected. Credit cards in my name. Spending on things like legal consultations, a new wardrobe, and apartment deposits. All hidden while you told me we needed to be more careful with our spending. I needed to prepare for my future, she said weakly. You needed to steal to prepare for your future, I corrected again. And you needed to lie to your family to make them complicit in your fraud. Her father set his wine glass down with controlled force. I need to ask you directly. Were you really planning to lie about this family to gain sympathy in court? The pause before she answered told everyone what they needed to know. I was going to explain my perspective, she finally said. Your fabricated perspective? Her sister said flatly. There is a difference. I watched her support collapse in real time. Even her own family could not defend her planning to lie about them in legal proceedings. You know what the saddest part is? I asked, settling back into my chair. If you had just been honest about feeling inadequate or overshadowed, we could have worked on it. Marriage counseling, separate therapy, changing our dynamic. But instead of fixing the problem, you decided to destroy everything around it. It's too late for that now, she said bitterly. It was too late the moment you chose deception over communication, I agreed. The moment you chose revenge over resolution. My brother shook his head. I went through a divorce. It was painful, chaotic, and expensive, but at least it was honest. This is just cruel. Cruel and calculated, my grandmother added. And poorly executed. Fortunately, I could not help but smile at that. Thank you, Grandma. Although I have to give her credit for persistence, I noted. 3 lawyers, months of planning, detailed financial schemes. If she had put that much effort into our marriage, we might not be here. My wife's face turned red. You think this is funny? I think justice is satisfying, I replied. You plan to attack me today, humiliate me in front of my family, and rob me in the process. Instead, you exposed yourself to everyone who matters and gave me everything I needed to protect myself. Her mother was crying softly. How did we get here? How did my daughter become someone who would do these things? You did not raise her to do this, I said gently. She chose this path herself, and now she has to live with the consequences of that choice. I stood up and began gathering the documents one last time. The papers are signed, the evidence is documented, the truth is out. I think we are done here. Wait, my wife said desperately. What about forgiveness and second chances? Is that not what marriage is supposed to be about? I stopped, holding the envelope. Marriage is supposed to be about trust, respect, and partnership. You systematically violated all three for months. Some bridges, once burned, cannot be rebuilt. Her father nodded slowly. Son, you have our support. What you plan to do? That is not the daughter we raised. Thank you, I said, meaning it. That means more than you know. As I headed toward the door, my wife called out to me one last time. Where are you going? I turned around with a smile that felt genuine for the first time in months. I'm going to enjoy the rest of my Thanksgiving. Maybe watch some football with my family. You know, the people who actually care about me. Your family is here too, she said, gesturing around the table. I looked at the faces around her. Her parents, her sister, my own family members, all looking at her with expressions of disappointment and disgust. Actually, I said, I think you will find that is not quite true anymore. And I walked out, leaving her alone with the wreckage of the relationships she had sacrificed for a plan that never had a chance of working. 6 months later, I was sitting in my backyard on a Sunday morning, coffee in hand, watching the sunrise. The house was quiet, peaceful. No more whispered phone calls. No more hidden credit card statements. No more walking on eggshells around someone who was secretly planning my destruction. The divorce was finalized 3 weeks after Thanksgiving. Her lawyers tried to contest the asset protection agreements. But when you have recordings of someone planning fraud, judges tend to be unsympathetic to your complaints of unfair treatment. She got what she brought into the marriage, which was essentially nothing. I kept what I had built, which was everything that mattered. Her family contacted me in February. Her mother called first, apologizing profusely and asking if we could still have a relationship. Her father sent a handwritten letter expressing his shame over his daughter's behavior. Even her sister invited me to her birthday party, making it clear I was more welcome than my ex-wife. I accepted their apologies and maintained cordial relationships with them. They were good people who had raised someone who made terrible choices. It was not their fault. My ex-wife tried to reconcile exactly once. In March, she showed up at my office with flowers and tears, claiming she had learned from her mistakes and wanted another chance. I listened politely for about 30 seconds, then called security to escort her out. Some bridges, once burned, leave only ashes. In April, I started dating again. Nothing serious at first, just reminding myself what it felt like to spend time with someone who did not view every interaction as a battle to be won or lost. Then I met someone at a business conference in Denver. An architect with her own firm, her own ambitions, her own life that did not require tearing mine down to feel successful. We talked for hours about our work, our goals, our experiences. No games, no hidden agenda, no recordings necessary. She moved in last month. Not because she needed my financial support, but because we genuinely enjoyed building something together. Yesterday, we hosted our first dinner party. Friends from work, neighbors, even her ex-husband and his new girlfriend showed up. Everyone got along. Everyone contributed to the conversation. Everyone left happy. It was exactly the kind of evening I had tried to create with my ex-wife for years, but never could because she was too busy keeping score to enjoy the game. As I sat there with my coffee, my phone vibrated with a text from my grandmother. Proud of you for choosing happiness over familiarity. Some people spend their whole lives in bad situations because change is scary. You chose better. She was right. The scariest part had not been ending my marriage. It had been admitting that someone I loved had been actively working against my interests for months. But once I faced that truth, everything else became simple. My ex-wife taught me that trust, once broken by systematic deception, cannot be repaired with apologies and promises. She taught me that some people view marriage as a game to win rather than a partnership to build. Most importantly, she taught me what I truly deserved in a relationship. Someone who celebrates my success instead of resenting it. Someone who communicates problems instead of weaponizing them. Someone who views our marriage as something to protect, not something to exploit. I found that person, and every day I wake up thankful for that Thanksgiving dinner when my ex-wife finally told the truth about who she really was. Sometimes, the worst thing someone can do to you turns out to be the best gift they could ever give you. The freedom to find something real. Comment. After hearing a story like this, I think it is important to talk about what comes next. Protecting your peace and self-respect is never selfish. It is a necessary act of responsibility toward yourself and your future. True kindness includes being kind to yourself first, which sometimes means walking away from a toxic situation. Healing begins the exact moment you decide you deserve better. You do not have to win every battle to find peace. Sometimes, the most powerful victory is choosing to let go and build a new life. Always remember that you are worthy of a relationship built on trust and mutual respect. Take care of your heart, and do not be afraid to prioritize your own well-being. If you like the stories, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.